Hey everyone, it's Caleb with the Antique Book Collective, and today I'm going to be explaining what is antique book selling, how does it work, and the stuff like that. So without further ado, let's dive right on in. So to start right out, I'd really like to answer one really big question that I'm sure you all have and that I hear all the time. It's really a common question for a lot of businesses, and that is, can anyone do it? Can anyone sell antique books in this case? And the answer to that is really yes. So long as you know how to use a computer and you have internet access, you can do this business the way that I do it. Of course, there are a ton of different ways to do it. If you really wanted, you could even go and build yourself a brick and mortar store and do everything through that. But for me personally, I run my business almost exclusively online. I, of course, do deliver some books every now and then if people are sort of local to me, but by and large, everything that I do is just online. I don't really even have to see anyone if I don't want to see anyone, depending on how I do it, but I like seeing people, so I actually use this business as an opportunity to go all around my state, see all these cool things, and it gives me some great tax write-offs and a lot of awesome experiences. So now that we established that anyone can sell antique books and it's really easy to do and there's like no barrier to entry, the next question that a lot of people have is, well, what is an antique? Like, what am I looking for exactly with my books? So believe it or not, there's actually specific rules set in place by the US government actually has a thing for what's considered antique. And for them, it means that your book has to be at least 100 years old to be considered antique. If it's just over like 40 years old, then it's only vintage, and then anything beyond younger than that is not antique or vintage. Of course, there's a lot of people that don't use those words accurately, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to worry too much about that. But for the sake of being really accurate, that's something that you might want to consider and keep track of. Something else that's really important to know is for when you're looking for antiques is like, where do you want to find those things? Like, what do you look for? Where do you go? All that sort of stuff. So it's actually really insanely easy how to find antique books. In later videos, I'm going to explain where you can go, how I find my books, my favorite places to get my books. But for right now, I'm just going to point at this shelf right here. So the bottom shelf, as you can see here, has a whole bunch of books that are rather bland colors. You have your tans, you have browns, you have a couple that are blue and stuff like that, but nothing's very exciting with those colors. That's something that I look for whenever I'm looking for an antique book, and that's just one telltale sign of what an antique book is. Of course, there's a lot of other things I look for, but antique books usually don't have the vibrant colors that you have with newer books or even vintage books. So that's something I always like to look for. Next up for that, though, is what exactly do I look for in an antique book? So I look for books that are popular that I might know, but even ones that I don't know. And in the next little segment, I'm going to explain what else I look for in that. Now, of course, the explanation on what I look for antique books, it's not quite set in stone, and on top of that, I'm not going to be able to get into it as thoroughly as I'd like. That's, of course, going to be for another video, probably. But for what I like to look for is, I like to open up a book. I like to open up to the copyright page. Most books have them, but believe it or not, there's actually a lot of books that don't have them. I find that some of the books from the late 1800s don't have copyright dates, so that's just a random little tidbit there. But what I like to look for is books that are antiques. I personally prefer to get books that are 1940s and earlier. I sell books that are newer than that, but 1940s and earlier is really my moneymaker. It's what I really enjoy, and honestly, I really like the books more. They changed how they did stuff after that, so that's just my own preference. But on top of that, I also look for price, what I could sell it for, and I'm going to get into that in one of the later sections. Now, I'm sure you guys are wondering, why do I look for 1940s and older books? Why do I look for the colors? Why do I look for all these different things? And the reason for that is because not all antique books are actually valuable, at least in my eyes. So for me, when I'm buying a book, I want to buy books that I can make at least $25 on, and I shoot to find books that are at least $35 to sell. Not all books meet those criterion for me. So there are books that you can buy that are antiques that are 150 years old, but you can only sell them for $3. There's a lot of reasons for why that might be. It might be the condition, it might be how many books are out there. There might be no one looking for that book. It's all a giant juggling game. So what I like to do is I find comps, which I'll get into later, on books that I can find that I can sell my books for at least the 25 to 35 point. Personally, I like to shoot for at least 50 to 60 bucks as like my golden range. More than that's obviously better, but 25 to 35 is my absolute base. Again, not all books are as valuable as you might hope. Something as strange as it may sound is books that appeal to girls usually don't hold their value as much. I don't really understand why that is, but I don't know. So, for example, you have your romance books that are old, you have cookbooks, you have sewing books. A lot of these books that are the more home style things and things that would have appealed to women back 100 years ago and stuff like that, they just don't have as much value. And my theory for that is because they printed more of these books back then, and more women were reading these books. So maybe that's the whole reason why that is. Like for cookbooks, I mean, I have found some cookbooks that there are a dozen of them all in one sale, and it's all the same cookbook, and you're like, what in the world's going on here? And that's one of the reasons why the value isn't the same. There's just so many more of them out there. Books that usually hold more value, from my experience, is well-known fiction titles, or well-known authors who have certain fiction titles, or nonfiction that is job-related, job-oriented, stuff that would appeal to homesteaders and preppers and that sort of thing, stuff that is information that you don't have on the internet as much anymore, stuff like that. And one other thing that I find is really valuable a lot of times is sets of books. So I'm going to point behind me again. As you can see on the top shelf up here, I have several different sets of books that I have purchased. And then on the right side over here, I have another set of books that I have purchased. Sets of books, I don't get the same amount of money per book as I might if I sell individual books. So for example, I personally shoot for at least $25 to $35 per book. And when I buy a set, I'm not shooting to find, say, if I do 10 books in a set, I'm not shooting to find $250 or $350 as the selling point. I might be content with just $60. And I'll get into the reasoning for that probably in another video, but for now I'm just going to explain that. Hope that helps, and I'll see you guys in the next little section. Alright, I get it. So I've told you guys a little bit about how much money I make, how much I shoot for, all that sort of stuff. But now you're probably wondering the same thing I would be wondering is, okay, where do I sell these books? Like, how do I sell these books? Do I go to a random book broker? Do I go to a library? Like, what's going on here? So for me, I personally sell my books exclusively through eBay. The reasoning for that, there's a lot of them, but one of them is because eBay really likes their sellers and they treat their sellers really well. I'll get into that in another video. I've had amazing experience with working with eBay. Another reason is Amazon, which I have worked with as well, and I'll do another video on Amazon as well in the future. But Amazon does not make things as easy for antique books. In fact, you can't sell a lot of antique books because how Amazon does their things, you need a ESIN and product numbers and all these things that were not present on books. So on Amazon, if you guys want to do some quick research, you'll find that there are almost no books out there on Amazon that are older than about the 1970s, which is when they introduced ISBN numbers, which is how Amazon rolls basically everything. So that's just a little caveat right there. Of course, there are other places that you could sell your books. So for me, I live in Oregon, and we have a place called Powell's Bookstore, and I know a lot of booksellers. Obviously not booksellers that do antique books. I'm like the only one around here. But I know a lot of booksellers that sell their books to Powell's Books. And Powell's Books will pay them for as many books as they have. I guess they have a whole catalog of books that they are buying at all times, which is pretty cool. But they don't pay very much. What I've heard from a lot of them is they get like $3 to $10 a book. Maybe a little bit more if the book's really cool. But for me, I'm like, why would I go for that when I'm selling my books for at least $25, as I've outlined before? So those are three options that I hear a lot, but there are other things as well. There are other websites. Abe Books is another one that I've seen a lot of stuff on, but personally I stinking hate Abe Books. Actually, it's owned by Amazon, which might be why I don't like it. I don't know. Amazon I love working with them, but at the same time, they got some weird things going on. But Abe Books, I think it's a clunky website. I definitely prefer eBay, and from my experience, there's a whole lot of people buying antique books on eBay. So that's just what I like to do. Eventually, I might make a website for just antique books. I know of quite a few people that have websites as well, but it's not something I've gotten into just yet because eBay works perfectly fine for me, and I honestly love it. And I've put in a lot of time on it, and I got a lot of reviews, and I'm a good eBay seller now, so I'm happy with that. So that's where I sell my antique books. It's where I recommend everyone does it, honestly. You can, of course, branch out and do your own things, but that's what I recommend. Now, I'm sure you guys are wondering as well, is where do I buy my books? If I'm buying these books that make so much money, where on earth am I getting them? Who's overlooking these deals? All that sort of stuff. So I'm just going to lay out the 3 places that I get my books. There are other places as well that you can get your books. These are the 3 I use, and I will go into it a lot more in depth in another video, but I'm just going to outline it here right now. So the first place that I go to that is, honestly, I think it's been the most profitable place I've gone to. I just don't like going there as much because I don't get to travel as much. But most profitable place, I'd say, is Goodwill Outlet. Not just Goodwill Store, Goodwill Outlet. And there are Goodwill Outlet stores all across the U.S. For me, I have just 3 within a few stone throws, and by stone throws, I mean a few dozen miles. But I got 3 by me, and one of them is amazing, one of them is okay, and one of them doesn't even have books. So you'll have to poke around your own area. You'll have to go on Google Maps, find your Goodwill outlets. I'll probably do a video on how to do that sort of stuff later, but honestly, Goodwill Outlet is the place to go. Don't go to a normal Goodwill store, though. Most of them, if not all of them, all the ones by me at least, don't have antique books. They send those along to the Goodwill Outlets because they like to do newer books. Their entire market sort of revolves around that. I'll probably go into that later in another video as well. Next place that I like to go to is library bookstores and library book sales. So there are 2 different things that they do. Some libraries have bookstores that they have going all year round. Usually you just go over to the librarian and be like, hey, I saw these 5 books in your bookstore. I'd like to buy them. And like, oh yeah, $5 or 25 cents. Like the price that they charge is all over the board. For me, I find that I normally pay at least $1 for most of these books, but I've had opportunities where I bought them for 5 cents. It varies all over the board. I've even had some books that I think the highest I've paid is $25 for just one book. But yeah, that's sort of what I like to shoot for when I'm doing library book stores. Library book sales is sort of like the library bookstore, but it's usually like an annual event or a monthly event or something like that. And that's usually when they drop their prices even lower. It's when a ton of people go to it, a ton of people, either that or no one goes there. It really varies. I have had so much awesome books that I've found. I've made a ton of money off of it, and I've been able to drive all over. So for me, I live in Portland area. I've driven all the way up to Seattle. I've driven all the way down to Reading, and I've driven all the way over almost to Idaho to buy antique books from these library book sales. These book sales are huge. They have tens of thousands of books, and they can be really, really, really good for those of you that know what to look for and are willing to do the drive. And if you like going on drives like me, then it's perfect for you. So yeah, prices are dropped, lots of books, and travel. That's the best thing for that. And something, little hint between you and me is all that traveling. If you drive your own car and if you have good gas mileage, that gives you some insane tax write-offs that you can do. They have something called the per diem tax rate, which is a tax phrase, and it means that there is a set amount of money that the government lets you write off for every mile that you drive. So if you have a good gas mileage car, it might be cheaper to actually write off the per diem rate as opposed to actual expenses. There's a lot of stuff in that. I'm not your tax advisor, but just a little hint between you and I, that's something you might want to mention when you're doing your taxes. So third place that I like to go to when I'm buying books is estate sales, garage sales, all those sorts of things. The stuff that you'd see advertised on Craigslist or stuff like that. So the reason for this is because several reasons. First off, estate sales are usually either someone has recently died or their family is downsizing them or they're choosing to downsize. They have 2 different sorts of estate sales. One of them is while the person's alive, one's while they're dead. I can't remember the actual phrases for those, but there's 2 of them for estate sales, and it doesn't really matter the difference. I personally like buying them from living people. I feel like a grave robber otherwise, but that's just me. But when you go to estate sales, you can get some amazing prices, and a lot of these people that are doing these estate sales are normally a lot older, and older people have older books. First off, they might be buying these books when they were new, back when they were 20 years old, and now these books are 60, 80 years old. Or maybe these people liked antique books back when they were kids, and now they have a book that's 200 years old. It's a really good opportunity to get books before anyone else can find them, like Goodwill Outlet. Everyone's gone through those books maybe. Obviously, people overlook them. I have no one looking for antique books by where I live, but there might be people looking for them where you live, so your estate sales might be where you get your in. The other places, of course, are the garage sales and stuff like that. Facebook Marketplace, everywhere that you can poke around and find antique books, And this is often people that are just trying to sell their stuff. They don't really know what they have, or they just want a couple dollars for it. So there's a good opportunity for you to make really good money with these things as well. Hope that really helps. And on to the next section. All right, I get it. You guys are now wondering how much money does it cost to start? Do I have to buy some stupid training thing for $500 to start? How much money does it take to buy these books? How much materials do I need? Let me just say right off the bat, I'm not charging anything for any of this information. It's going to be all on my channel for free because that's just what I'm going to be doing. If you guys want to support me, I'll have a affiliate stuff in my Facebook page that I'll be mentioning later. My Facebook page is going to lay out about how much it costs to buy, what I say is required, what I recommend, and that sort of thing. But what I'm expecting for that sort of stuff is you could start at an absolute minimum for about $50. Honestly, I would say it'd be better to start a little over $100 all the way to $500. Of course, $10,000 would be better to start if we're being honest, because then you could just go all in. But just start small. Just the 50 to 100 should really do for most people. If you want to dive in with both feet, of course you could do more, but that's just what I want to preface everything with. Other expenses that you guys have to consider when you are doing this is if you want to do the book sales like I do, that I do a lot of driving for, you'll need a car and you'll need a full tank of gas. That'll drive prices, how much it costs to start up a whole lot, especially with the gas prices right now. They're going up and up and up, but that's just something that I really want to outline is you could start for really small. A little more is better, but you could start small if you really want. For me, I know that I liked starting small. I started my entire business probably with $100 personally, and that was a couple years ago. But yeah, I've done it. It worked great. I scaled up so fast, and now I'm making a lot of money. So that's how much that sort of stuff costs. Other expenses that you probably want to consider is storage. So if you're like me, you have a corner in your house where you can store your books. Honestly, storing books doesn't take that much space. So excuse me for a bit. Boy. This is one book. So I have on my little sticky note here that I'm expecting to sell it for about $15. I know that's below my $25 to $35 price point, but my mom bought this. I brought my mom into this business because she really liked how much money I was making. But yeah, $15. That's almost entirely profit because I think I actually bought this one for free. So takes up this much space. Let's say you have one corner in your house, stacked floor to ceiling. That's probably like $2,000 worth of books because books are all different sizes. Put him back. But yeah, as you can tell, you could stack them. Books don't really care about being stacked. That's sort of what bookshelves are. Honestly, if you could get a bookshelf for all your books, it works even better. For me, I have all my books in a metal filing cabinet, and I did that for moisture, for mice, for fire, like all that sort of stuff. I want to be on the safe side. I got the filing cabinet for free, so that's an expense that I didn't have to worry about. If you guys want to go all in, you'll have to buy one. That, of course, drives things up. I don't personally recommend it because I think piles work great. I have actual piles over there underneath a table of books that are worth less than my other ones. But yeah, basically you can make do with whatever you have on hand. Of course, if you don't have a corner in your house for some weird reason, you might need to buy or rent a storage unit. You might need to do something like that. Of course, that price does raise everything up a bit. I don't know how much storage units are. I don't have one. I don't like having expenses for stuff I don't use, but yeah. Another thing, if you want to go all in, is you might want to do warehousing space. I don't do that. I do everything in my own house, actually my basement, because that's where all cool businesses start, right? I do it all out of my basement, sorry. And it works great for me. So that's something that you guys might want to do, might not want to do. There's, of course, a lot of optional things that I'm not going to mention because that's just going to scare everyone. But yeah, it's so incredibly easy to start. You can do it with pretty low amount of money. Honestly, if you really, really wanted to do it, you could start for probably $5. Of course, when you start with $5, you're not going to make a whole lot of money up front. I liked the whole $50 to $100 range because then you can buy enough books that you can actually see stuff, how stuff's going on. If you're only doing with like $5, you can buy like one book in a box to ship your book out with. So that's sort of your give and take. You want to have a certain amount of money to start with if you can, but of course you can start with less. So I hope that helps, and on to the next section. All right, now here's the real thing though. What can you expect to make on this? Like, how much money can I make a living? That sort of stuff. I'm sure you guys are wondering that. I know I was wondering that when I first started. And the truth is, you can actually make a full-time living. I know that because I have done it. That's the only reason why I'm teaching this, is because I've done it, you know? Like, I'm not one of those gurus that doesn't know anything but wants to teach. That's boring. But yeah, I've done it, and I've done it because, first off, I saw it as a profitable opportunity. Second off, I sticking love antique stuff, especially books. When I was a kid, I got some antique books. I got some antique newspapers. I got newspapers from World War II that we pulled out of the walls of my old house. I love that stuff. It's like, oh, so exciting for me. So yeah, that's sort of my thing going on there. So I was like not too worried about getting the profit. I really just wanted to save books from the trash can because that's where they go otherwise. But I was also thinking, well, I'll probably be able to make a good amount of money. And after my first few months, I was like, oh, I can make a lot of money from this. So for me, my first year, I actually made a little over $50,000. That's $50,000 US. And that's a lot of money. And better yet, I started in September. So my first year was actually just a few months. I was really excited with those results. And there's a couple caveats to that I'll get into maybe later. But right from the get-go, I can almost guarantee, obviously not guarantee, depends on what you guys find, what's around you, all that sort of stuff. But for me, I don't know if I've ever had a month that I've made under $100. And that's including the months that I haven't bought anything. Like, I had a entire span of about a year, a little over a year, that I didn't buy any books. And I was selling books all the time because I bought a lot of books beforehand, and I was ebbing away at my entire inventory. I go months and months without listing books sometimes because I don't do this as my full-time job. I just like to get the extra income, and when I want more money, I can go hardcore. I can shop, I can buy a bunch of books, and then I can list them, and then it'll slowly ebb away at how many books I have. It's so incredibly nice. It's like the ultimate side hustle as far as I'm concerned, and it makes good money. Seriously, I've never made a month less than $100. I'm pretty sure. Like, I'd love to look it up. I probably will look it up at some point. But yeah, I'm always selling books. It's always fun to just go into the post office, drop off a brand new book, be like, here you go, here you go, here you go. Come in with a stack one day, come in with like 100 pounds of books once. Got some fun stories for that. You know what? I'm just going to tell one of the stories right now. So I had an encyclopedia set once. The entire set weighed, I want to say 300 pounds. And I had a guy in Greece that was like, hey, I'd like to buy your books. And I'm like, I don't know about that, pal. Shipping's going to be crazy. And he's like, oh, well, I'm still interested. Why don't you run the numbers? So I ran the numbers. I was getting quotes from all these places. And then I get back to the guy. I'm like, so, as I said, it was going to be rather expensive. And by the looks of it, it's cheaper for me to get an airplane ticket and put the books in the airplane than it would be to ship. Why? Well, as it turns out, shipping the books was like $2,000, $3,000, because international travel, all that sort of stuff, it was absolutely insane. Obviously, the guy was like, oh, wow, you're right, that is a lot of money. I'm not interested. And I'm like, yeah. So, fun little story there. But back to the can I make a living sort of thing. So you can make basically as much money as you want to make, how much money you put into it, how much time you put into it, stuff like that. If you follow what I recommend, I would say your profit margins will be a lot better. Personally, I avoid all books that are below like $15 because people will try to negotiate down. I've had people offer like $2 for a book that I was asking $20 for, which means I would lose money if I accepted that, so I don't accept it. But honestly, you guys just have to use a little bit of business know-how. You got to know that you got to make a certain amount of money on every single book. You got to factor in your time that you put into it, that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, who would say no to an extra $100 a month if you don't have to work very much? Who would say no to an extra $5,000 a month? Who would say no to $50,000 in just a couple months, like my first year? That sort of stuff. I mean, it's really easy to start. You have to be a little careful on how you do stuff, but honestly, you can make a whole lot of money. Of course, I'm not a business advisor or anything like that, so don't dive in too hardcore if you guys have never done this before. But it really is a good side hustle. I've loved it. It's made me a lot of money. And honestly, I just have a passion for it. I mean, seeing antique books that, honestly, I'm serious, These people tell me, oh yeah, we were either going to send it to the dump or we were going to send it to the recycling plant. Antique books that are hundreds of years old. I have a set of books over there from 1771. It would have been thrown away. It's like, you can't throw away something that old. That should be illegal, you know? That's like how I feel, so that's why I'm going out buying all the books I can. Of course, I get busy, and that's why I can go months at a time, years at a time of not buying these books and just dropping them off at the post office whenever I sell them. But yeah, it's something that you guys can totally make a living on. It's something that I've made a living on, and it's something that I have a passion for. So if you guys are book nerds like me, if you're history buffs like me, if you're antique nerds like me, then this is probably the business for you. And especially if you want to do a little side hustle and make a little money on the side, it's something that you could totally do. Like, I honestly did a couple of years where I only worked weekends, and I still basically only work weekends except for when I'm dropping off books, because that's when all the book sales are and lots of stuff like that. So I'm just going to end this video here before I go too much more in depth and bore all you guys to death. But honestly, this is really a good business. I'm not just saying that because I'm doing it and trying to sell something, because I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm doing all these trainings for free. You can do whatever you want with it. You can block my channel. I don't know. I don't even know if you can do that, but yeah. Do with it whatever you guys like. Dive into your own business. Maybe talking about antique books got you thinking about antique chairs. Maybe you want to go sell antique chairs. Go ahead. Antique stuff sells for dirt cheap when you know where to shop. And honestly, if you want to look for anything antique, don't go to the antique stores. Go to estate sales. Go to Goodwill Outlet. Those are like the best places to look for anything antique. My mom, actually, we were at a Goodwill Outlet and we were looking at those standing sewing machines. And she's like, oh, we could fix these up and do this and this and this. And I'm like, good luck on storage. I stick with books because I can fit $5,000 worth of books in the place of one sewing machine. So that's sort of what I told her. That's sort of what I'd recommend to everyone is books is the best because you can fit more money in a smaller area of storage. Because, I mean, think about sewing machines that take warehouses. But that's a total rabbit trail right there. Sorry. I'm going to end the video now. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I would like to invite you to like my Facebook page, follow my Facebook group for antique booksellers, all that sort of stuff. All of that's in the description below. If you'd like to start this whole business, you can check out one of my other videos. I'll probably have them somewhere up here or in the description below. So all that, I really hope this helps you guys out, and I hope you guys can join me in the antique book business and help me save history from the trash cans, because otherwise that's where it's going.